Hi, African Queen channel subscribers, viewers, and friends. Thank you very much again for tuning in to my channel. I really do appreciate it. How have you guys been doing? Life has not been easy. It's been quite a difficult struggle. As you know, I'm always very cheerful and happy and always looking positive and always trying to find the silver lining in the clouds, right? Always trying to look at the glass as half full rather than half empty. Because I believe that, with a positive attitude, a lot of things can be achieved. But if you have a very negative attitude in life, there's very little that you can achieve. It kind of like stalls your progress and kind of like debilitates you. It immobilizes you when you're fearful and when you're negative. So it's always very important to try to lift your spirits up regardless of what's going on. But in the situation that we are in right now, unfortunately, my happy-go-lucky mood and atmosphere is slowly dwindling away. All right. I believe, life is seasonal. So I guess we are in that season where, we'll have to be very serious and concerned and basically concentrate and focus on what's really going on in the world and not just try to isolate myself too much and be living in a different world from what is actually currently occurring right now, especially where it concerns our African brothers and sisters, and the fact that we are so closely connected, especially when we come to the diaspora, where we don't have our family members. Other Africans from other African countries become so crucial and so important to us. So, for example, where I live, we have Africans from different parts of the continent, and we see each other, and we're very different. Under normal circumstances, we would not be living anywhere near each other. But because we are living in the UK, we are then, kind of like put together, kind of. So when the government decides where it's going to place families, it decides they're going to get the African families on this side, we're going to get the Asian families on that side, the Arab families on that side. And you can actually see, that there are certain postcodes where there are more of the African type of people as opposed to the Asian kind of people. And you'll also notice it when you go to places like the parks. You'll see that in the parks, you'll see, one specific park has more people, migrants from Asian countries. And you go to another park and you see most of the migrants there, maybe from Africa. And I believe it's quite deliberate because I think what they do is it's not negative. I don't think. I think it's trying to ensure that the families that come together have things in common. And it makes sense, that you have something in common that you can discuss with your neighbor so that you kind of like reduce the isolation. It's just a way to try to explain to you how close-knit we are as a family here in the diaspora, even if we just pass each other and we don't say hello to one another. Fact is that we recognize each other and we see each other and we understand the story that's behind us. Okay, 1 second. Unfortunately, my phone is ringing. Yes, guys, so going back to what I was talking about, it's just recognizing the fact that we value each other so much more. When we come to the diaspora, you'll realize that people who don't even talk to each other from the same country are suddenly friends. Those artificial borders, those artificial barriers that are created in our home countries, such as divisions by tribe, race, and class, no longer exist over here. So, for example, I can tell you that when I was in England, I went to my bank once. I went to a bank once at Barclays, and I found a Kenyan Asian lady, a Kenyan Indian girl, who was working as customer service rep. And when she saw me, immediately she asked me, "Are you from Kenya?" And I said, "Yes." And immediately we went into speaking Swahili, And there goes, a lady who I would just, pass by in Kenya. Not that we have anything against each other, but normally we just don't necessarily want to engage too closely with just everybody. But, you could just see how close she was to me, and how we started talking about things. And the things we were discussing were so intimate, Oh, yes, I remember I was limping that time because I had fallen down. And she asked me what happened, and I told her that I fell down the staircase, and I just come from the doctors, and I was, struggling a little bit, but fortunately I hadn't broken anything. I just slipped and fell, on the staircase. And she told me about, her auntie who had also slipped and fallen, and how she couldn't get an appointment with the NHS here in the UK. guys, these kids will drive me mad. Okay, so anyway, she couldn't get an appointment here with the NHS in the UK. So she decided to go back to Kenya, okay, to go and get treated at the Aga Khan Hospital. So here we are in the UK, and sometimes because we have access to free medical care, unfortunately, because we can't get appointments on time, what that means is that some people have to travel away. Some people have to get up and go to India, go back to Kenya, whatever, and get their treatment over there. And that's what I'm trying to say. This is how intimate we get. We talked about this like within 5 minutes of meeting one another. We were getting into this level of detail. And that's why I'm saying that we are very, very close to one another here in the diaspora. And that's something that I think that geopolitically is not really recognized, but we know. So, for example, when we see, situations such as what's happening currently in the country of Niger, not Nigeria, Niger, in West Africa, it is of concern to all of us Africans, because the idea of coming to and traveling to countries such as this for many people is actually to seek peace. The Nigerian desert is where like 50,000 to 80,000 people cross to go into Italy, okay? And they risk their lives, and many people actually die in that desert in Niger, trying to escape poverty, running into Libya, ending up into Italy, some of them losing their lives in the Mediterranean. So I tell you, Niger, apart from what they're talking about, which is the gas pipeline that is passing through there, okay? Since Nord Stream was destroyed, now there's a gas pipeline that's supposed to be going through Niger, the uranium and things like that. There's also the human life, the human cost, okay? There are people who are there. There are so many, like I read that there were like 8,000 children, unaccompanied minors, who actually were sent back to Niger. And they're from different countries. They're from Djibouti, they're from Eritrea, they're from East Africa, they're from West Africa, but they're in Niger. So Niger Niger has a very important role to play for Africans in terms of it being part of, it kind of works almost like the Underground Railroad of the US, where the slaves were actually escaping their slave masters and trying to get into freedom. Okay, they had their routes that they used to use, and this is part of the route that is used by Africans through the Nigerian desert, where many people have lost their lives, and those lives are not even counted apart from the ones that actually drown in the Mediterranean. So what's going to happen here is that if we continue, okay, if this situation in Niger is allowed to escalate, what's going to happen is that you're going to see more displacement of families. And the families that are abroad, like in the UK, the US, and other countries, Nigerian families, West African families, people from Nigeria, Niger, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Senegal, Mali, Chad, all those countries are going to be directly affected by whatever decision is taken by France and America going into Niger. And so we have to stand by and try to put pressure on the US and France, no matter how much they need their uranium. Uranium is a metal. It can never be more important than the cost of human life. We need to understand, okay, that already we are targets at the very highest level, okay? So the last thing you want to do as a brother, as a sister in Africa, is to be part of the system that goes to annihilate, okay, the country that is next to you that could possibly be a refuge, a source of support and a refuge for your family. If you destroy that country and you deny it of electricity and water, what will happen when they come and destabilize your country and you have nowhere to go? Do you see what happened when Russia went into war with Ukraine? What happened to the Africans who were studying in Ukraine? What happened in the end? They were actually given the least amount of support. They were left behind. Many of them had to trek and walk. When they got to Germany, many of them were stripped, naked, okay? Some of them were humiliated in ways that you can't even imagine. Even people with children were not even allowed to board trains. So I would say, as an African, we should not even try to destabilize any country that is next to us, or to deny the services that are essential to any other country that is next to us. And any African leader who tries to do something like that to another country has to be seen as an enemy of not just that country, but an enemy of Africa. Because, our grandparents and our great-grandparents, they fought, okay, to get back our freedoms. It was not handed to them on a silver platter. Many people gave up their lives. If you listen to the history of colonialism in Africa, for example in Kenya, you know what happened to many people, who were recruited by the colonial government to go and build roads, and what happened to them when they worked so hard and eventually fell down and collapsed, and taken by big tractors and poured onto tractors just like logs and tipped over and buried in mass graves. Guys, yeah, I don't think that it is in anybody's interest to just ignore what is going on. It doesn't make any sense, because as long as Africans are not safe, nobody is safe. Europeans are not safe, Asians are not safe, Arabs are not safe. The same thing. We are all interdependent in such an amazing way. You only realize this once the security net is gone, once the safety net is gone. Once the invasions happen into African countries, once annihilation starts to take place of peoples of Africa, that is when the world will wake up to the role of the African in the world. And it's a big, huge role. Africa is a huge, massive continent, okay? They try to tell us that we are overpopulating the continent. But the fact is that we have arable land, about 69% of arable land that is still uncultivated. Okay, our population is less than big continents such as China, much less than big continents like China. Our population is maybe something like 1.3 billion, whereas China is over 2 billion. And yet their surface area, their square kilometer, their density of population is so much higher in China compared to Africa. And yet we have so much more arable land compared to China, which is why China also grows food in our continent. Okay? So if you have a continent like Africa without Africans in it, that continent is going to be completely uninhabitable. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So any action of the US, of France, of the West against a country such as Niger, the second poorest country in the world, that is lighting up the cities of France. 1 in every 3 light bulbs in France is lit by little poor Niger. Niger that has so little access to anything. I remember sending a team once to Niger, and they came back to me with horror stories about what they found in Niger. Right from the airport, people coming into the aeroplane with torn clothes to clean the aeroplane. This is how poor Nigerians are. Niger is a very, very poor country. When you see young men in their 30s saying, no, we are going to stand up and fight for our country, when you see them take charge and refuse and say and stand up to Big Brother, Uncle Sam, when they stand up to a big bully like France, you better know that they've had enough. All right? And they are going to rally the pity, the wrath of the whole wide world against the aggressors and invaders. They can call it intervention. We know what intervention means. Intervention means military invasion. That's really what it is. Yeah? Rescuing. In the name of rescuing a country and reinstating civil rule, you end up invading a country that clearly has decided that it wants to go a certain direction, and you come and decide that no, you're going to stop that direction because it doesn't work for you. The US was founded by the forefathers of America. They were all about freedom. So what happened to that? If you go and annihilate a people who are fighting for freedom as an American, are you still American? Are you? Really? That will also have long-lasting impacts, which can also cause even greater losses, okay, in terms of your abilities to, to access the resources of Africa from other African nations within the continent. But what I want to say to the US is, do not follow the crowd. Be different. Do things differently and be different. And you will see a very different response from Africans, because Africans are expecting you to stand up, America, and to be counted as one of those who loves Africa, who loves Africans, and will not support any regime that takes from a people that are already poor, who are fighting for their rights, for their democratic rights, for their democratic space, to own what is rightfully theirs. I do not see America being that continent that is going to become that bully in the world. And therefore, I still have hope and I still have belief that America will go back on its knees where it started. Okay? And consult the God who took you out of bondage and into freedom, so that you can be that positive force that dominates to ensure peace and prosperity in African countries. And with that, I just want to say we are praying, I'm hoping, we are hopeful. All of us in the diaspora are still looking up to America. I'm still hoping, against all hope, that America has learned its lessons from what happened in Libya, from its invasion in Libya, and that it will not allow this to happen again in Africa, because Africa is awake. African people are awake. The young people in Africa, the young people from Africa who have come to America to work and build your continent, to come and build your country, are all watching and waiting to see what you do to our African countries, what you allow to happen with your might in Africa. Because if you want me to end with this one, I will say might is not always right. And on that note, guys, thank you so much for listening. Those of us Africans who are in Africa and those of us who are in the diaspora, it's time to get together and to say, hey, what's going on? Don't turn a blind eye, don't turn a deaf ear to what's going on in our continent. Yeah? We need to rally together. There's been a call. You've been seeing a lot of people rallying together. Anyone who has a social media platform should at least produce one video, one, if not a video, a podcast or something, in support of peace in Africa. Because it's only through peace we will develop. Yes, peace is inconvenient to those people who are into the business of war. But we know that war is not the solution to the situations that we have in Africa. That we need peaceful coexistence in order to develop our continent so that it becomes that continent that emancipates the entire world. Not just Africa. Africa is that oasis, is the motherland for the whole world. When everything goes wrong in the whole wide world, everybody should be able to run to Africa and feel safe amongst Africans. So, on that note, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening. And let me hear your comments, because have you ever looked at things differently this way? Have you ever considered that the resources in Africa have not only a physical presence, but they also have a spiritual presence in the continent? They are supposed to be there in the continent. They're not supposed to be outside of the continent. The same thing with the animals in the continent. They're not supposed to be taken out of the continent. They're supposed to remain in our continent. Yeah? There's a reason why things are found where they are found. There's a reason. These are the building blocks of our continents. And if we start messing up with the balance under the ground, what that means is that we are only causing our own demise faster than we imagine. Thank you very much for your ear, and let's see you in the next vlog, right? Thank you so much, guys.